and welcome to Tabor Talk. I'm your host, Michael Tabor, and I am very, very sick. It's the middle of the night. I went downstairs, and as you can see, my unfinished basement, and I drank last night, and I should not drink. I have a history of alcohol abuse, and I actually did a couple of videos, like three, and I was really going off on Jocko Willink. I watched him, and it's whatever. By the way, the sentiment is real. I don't. I think that I actually like Jocko Willink a lot. He's a brave man. He's the real deal. He's not full of shit. He really is a Navy SEAL guy. But I do think that people are a little too propping him up, and he's kind of getting a little too full of himself, perhaps. I don't know. Anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. So, like this drinking thing, it's like really worth it. Like I think I aged like 20 years. I mean, I'm looking at the image now. I look like shit, and I have a splitting goddamn headache. I'm going to the bathroom, and I think I had 8 beers, like a hard cider. I mean, I totally overdid it, and I don't drink. So it was a weird fucking thing, and so anyway, let me. I felt like doing one of these, and I was listening to an older Tim Ferriss podcast. That's what I do. I read books and I listen to podcasts, and basically podcasts are just radio on demand. I grew up on talk radio. As a kid, I used to be a big Yankee fan, and I loved listening to the games on AM radio, even more so than watching on television. I just love baseball on the radio, and afterwards you would have usually a conservative talk show host. I didn't even know what it was back then, but like Bob Grant. I think, was it Barry Gray? No, I think it was just Bob Grant who followed Yankee games, So anyway, I'm just going to play this little clip from Tim Ferriss, and they're talking about favorite books, and he mentions McPhee, John McPhee, and I will talk after I play this. Here we go. He's his host, by the way. This is from May 4th, 2016, and it's Mike Rowe. Remember that guy who did 30 Jobs? Really cool. All right, here we go.
Travis McGee is a boat bum created by John D. McDonald, who lives on the Busted Flush, which is a barge he won in a poker game. And Travis takes his retirement in early installments. And when he works, he busies himself recovering
He's talking about
that
one of
which
his
has
favorite
been
books, but this is not what I wanted.
or conned away from people who he's your last best hope. So the Travis McGee mysteries are really adventures that are told through the eyes of this quixotic character who's really a philosopher. He's a knight errant who, like I said, comes out of retirement to do these quasi good works. He keeps 50% of what he recovers, of course. That's how he lives. But McDonald put McGee so far ahead of his time, and it's just a wonderful. These books are all time capsules. There's a color in every title. So the deep blue goodbye, pale gray for guilt, bright orange for the shroud, a lonely silver rain, a tan and sandy silence, cinnamon skin, nightmare and crimson. All these great books, and it's just great trash. It's the best pulp I've ever read, and I've never had anybody read them and say those weren't good. They're offensive in the sense that they're politically incorrect and out of step, but they're good.
So I want to. I feel compelled to try to trade, or at least share. So a couple that I think, based on that description, you might like. Have you ever heard of Motherless Brooklyn by Jonathan Lethem?
Have you recommended this before?
I might have,
because I've heard of it, and I think it was from on this podcast.
Quite possibly. It's emulating pulp detective fiction. The hero of the story, hero I guess is the right word, ends up being a detective with Tourette's syndrome.
I love it already.
It's a great book.
It's Fantastic. And the Bryson recommendation I have not read at home.
They were
and
talking
I'm
about Bill
going to pick it
Bryson.
up.
I'm a big fan of Bill Bryson.
Made me
so.
think, just the premise, it's such a fascinating way to structure a piece of writing. Reminded me of John McPhee,
Yep.
who's one of my favorite writers. And
Princeton, by
there's
the way.
depending on sort of your subject matter, but he's very similar to Bryson in the sense that he can make almost anything interesting.
That's what I want to talk about.
And the breadth of subject, people read it because he wrote it, not because of the subject matter.
That's right.
And so McPhee he's won at least one Pulitzer, maybe two. He's written an entire book on oranges, an entire book on hand-carved canoes. He's written Coming into the Country, which is about the Alaskan wilderness. But the one that I really enjoyed, two pieces. One is about a single tennis match involving Arthur Ashe called Levels of the Game, which is just spectacular.
Let me just pause it. And okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about. He is such a great writer. I read that book just recently, in fact, the book with the single tennis match with Arthur Ashe, and it's just beautiful. And I'm not a tennis fan. I don't play tennis. I don't know anything about it, but the writing is so beautiful, and it's just incredible. Like one of the best books I've read, I don't know, in quite some time, you know. So it really comes down to when you're at that high level, like a John McPhee. It's just the writing style and prose. It doesn't matter what they're talking about. So before they were talking about Bill Bryson talking about I think it was the name of the book is My House. And he goes like, oh, here's the bathroom. And then he goes through the history of plumbing. And it's because like, oh, this seems like boring and bullshit. But Bill Bryson turns it into magic. So, all right, I'm almost 7 minutes. I'll be talking a lot more about like some of my favorite books. So, okay, I'm not feeling well and kind of sick, and maybe I shouldn't be drinking so much. All right. Good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding. Here on tape.